Bring in show music, please.
This is Squawk Pod, and I'm CNBC producer Cameron Costa. On today's episode, New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani is threatening a property tax hike in his budget proposal. That is, if Governor Hochul doesn't pass a wealth tax. Partnership for NYC Stephen Fulop does the tax math.
If you do what he's proposing to do, taxes in New York City would be roughly 22% on the corporate side relative to New Jersey, a mile away.
And the FDA's Operation Stork Speed, a review of baby formula supply and safety. Former FDA Commissioner Dr. Scott Gottlieb says it's a good idea, but we shouldn't be comparing America's system to Europe's.
Europe tolerates a much higher level of outbreaks in baby formula than we do in the U.S., so we require drug-like manufacturing standards, and that limits the ability of manufacturers to reformulate these baby formulas.
Plus, Amazon has snapped a 9-day losing streak, and Stephen Colbert's brewing controversy with his own network, CBS. It's all over an interview with a Democratic Texas state representative.
If the TV gods want to air something, I think they should be allowed to air something.
A lively conversation awaits you.
I'm glad that finally someone is saying, look, you need to change your ways.
It's Wednesday, February 18th, and Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Andrew by in 3, 2, 1. Cue Andrew.
Good morning. Welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live at the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Andrew Sorkin along with Joe Kernen. And I was going to say Becky Quick is off, so it's just the boys.
We have been spamming the globe, the two of us.
Spamming the globe, exactly.
Now we're both in Times Square.
Here we are.
And take a look at the shares of Amazon, the tech giant, coming off a market gain of more than 1%. By the way, that was a rebound. It snapped a 9-day slide that shaved about $450 billion off of Amazon's market cap. The selling frenzy tied to Amazon's fourth quarter report from earlier this month, where the company outlined 2026 CapEx plans of $200 billion. That was more than four times more than the $40 billion estimate that Wall Street analysts had forecast. It's all about AI. AI. It's going to help some, hurt others. If you know how to integrate it, it might help you, or your company might go to zero. I'm wondering, do you need someone that knows how to do this? I think maybe management is going to be more important than ever in trying to figure out how to make sure you're not just put out of business by AI, and that it becomes something additive, or that you can. We're going to talk to the strategist, but this is sort of her notion. You need to be able to integrate the positive things about AI, because it's going to be very disruptive. Are there going to be any travel agents left? Will there be any travel agents left?
No, but we could all use a travel agent. I had some travel problems, so you want to be able to call.
Was it a real?
You want to be able to call somebody.
But will there be an AI agent that you can talk to and do the same thing?
That's a human or an AI?
No,
totally
the
AI. Yes.
Well,
for 90% of the use cases, it'll be an AI, and then
so
they'll
the travel
transfer it over.
agencies that are around right now will just have no employees then.
Right.
Yeah. What are they?
Not no employees, but maybe a lot less. Yes, a lot less.
I mean, it's a daunting.
There's going to be for everything,
And we saw with software stocks, and people all of a sudden it like dawns on them all at the same time.
Yeah, because we can just code our own thing. It's all happening.
And it's happening quickly. And what about 5 years from now?
It's quick.
You have no idea.
You
don't know 1 year from now. It's like trying to figure out the weather for next. You don't know a year from now how it's going to be. But 5 years from now, the world could be totally
different. The world will be totally different 5 years from now.
In a good way?
Depends. I think it could be very interesting, but I don't know what we're all going to do.
Oil prices are in focus following some talks between the U.S. and Iran over that country's nuclear program and obviously other things. Iran's foreign minister said that the two countries reached an understanding on what he called guiding principles, but cautioned that didn't mean that a deal was imminent. In an interview last night, Vice President J.D. Vance said that the parties agreed to meet again, but he noted Iran was not acknowledging some key U.S. demands. He also said military action remains an option. Iran partially closed the Strait of Hormuz. As the first time that has happened this partial, as it held talks with the U.S. yesterday. I was conducting some Navy maneuvers. It cited security precautions for that move, and a lot of scuttlebutt. I was interested in the op-ed pages of the Journal and their take that don't make the same mistake that if you get some nuclear concessions that you call off everything else for Iran. That the people in Iran have stepped up, right. And that was something that happened during the Obama administration. They thought, okay, we're getting all these other concessions. Meanwhile, Iran knows that if they, sort of at least pretend to be conceding on some nuclear demands, that they'll stay in power. Maybe, I'm not saying you need regime change, but you should get more than just, than just an agreement that looks good on nuclear, because we'll be here again in a year, 2 years, 5 years.
Julia Boorstin had a great sit-down interview yesterday with Netflix's co-CEO, Ted Sarandos. He's now saying his company is giving Paramount Skydance a week to negotiate with Warner Brothers Discovery over a possible deal, so Warner shareholders understand that Netflix is making the better bid. Sarandos joined Closing Bell Overtime yesterday.
And making a ton of noise, flooding the zone with confusion for shareholders, so they don't really understand the deal, and including floating all these hypothetical offers into and talking directly to the shareholders and bypassing the Warner Brothers Discovery board. So we gave them the opportunity to get those shareholders exactly what they deserve, which is complete clarity and certainty about what the value of these deals are.
Now, one of the biggest questions in the fight over Warner Brothers has been whether the government would bless a Netflix or Paramount acquisition. Sarandos said there's no reason to believe that Paramount has any edge over the company. Take a look at what he said.
PSKY does not have a faster regulatory path. I don't know why the Ellisons would insinuate they have some inside track into the Department of Justice, but I can assure you they don't.
Warner's 7-day negotiating period with Paramount ends next Monday. So the question is, can they convince the board otherwise? And what do you think, Joe Kernen, about the idea of this Justice Department and White House?
I don't know what Netflix.
I mean, that's the whole. But that is the whole story.
Not really. The whole story is it's a $70 stock that was $140 about 6 months ago.
I appreciate that. No, but I'm saying.
Well, so why do they want it? And what is the market check telling Netflix about whether they need these assets? Or is there something else that hurt that stock?
Well, I think it's a combination of things.
I think you be careful what you wish for. And
Are you rooting for Paramount? Is that what you're doing?
Not saying that. I'm just saying that right at the very beginning, people said, what does this do for Netflix? Is it really important 5 years from now? Because it doesn't seem important right now. I think that
I think it's important from the
I'm assuming that because of the president's friendship with the Ellisons, that they probably would have an inside track. I don't know how far they take it. He has said that he's not going to get involved. I don't know if he gets involved in most things in some way or another. So I assume, but Sarandos, is he naive to say that they don't have the inside track? I don't know. But
the fundamental question is, if you are the board of Warner Brothers, do you go down the track of taking this Netflix deal, which you think is the better deal for the company, which is an interesting thing to think about. That's what their argument has been thus far.
Because they can come up with the money, basically, and there's no risk.
Because they're arguing that it's a guaranteed deal, and it's less debt, and that therefore it's in the better hand. That it's in better hands. That's the argument that they're making.
All right.
The question is, do you go down that path, and then find yourself 12 months from now in a situation where the Justice Department is seeking to block the deal? Right. And that is what you just don't know. Now, the flip side is, do you go down the path of taking the Paramount deal and also run into a similar situation? Do you think that's possible? There's an argument, by the way, there's an antitrust argument on both sides of the aisle. Right. And then you land in a place, and now you're suing Paramount to get the breakup fee, and do you get the fee and all of those things? And where are you a year and a half from now? That's a big thing. Because part of it is what happens to this company a year and a half from now.
Netflix had run up, and you remember, I remember when it got under, I think that there were some splits since then, but it got under 200. There were some splits, and it went to 800 or whatever. And it did run up. Okay, so I'm looking at the chart. So in 2023, it was down at $30 and $40. But June was not that long ago. Do you remember? Let's think of what we were doing in June. What happened to the fortunes of Netflix between June and now to explain the stock going down basically 50%, if it's not the Warner Brothers acquisition? Are other things?
Well, by the way,
is it subscription? Is that slowed? Have they hit a wall on growth? Is that why they need?
I think
Warner
there is
Brothers?
a growth question.
So then maybe they do need it. But you could say the market check on whether people really want them to win.
I'm not
this
sure
is
that that's. I think there's been some worry that they've been overpaying, but I don't think that.
Well, I'm not saying they're overpaying, but
No, but that's
they got. There's a lot of issues at Warner Brothers, and so they got issues at Netflix. It's like for the amount of incremental, additive gains in revenue or whatever, is it worth it? Is it worth it? How much of it Netflix would it represent?
Hold on, so you're suggesting.
Hold
on. Here's the suggestion you're making, which I will take the other side of.
Okay.
But I believe that what you're suggesting is that somehow if Netflix walked away from this deal tomorrow,
right,
that somehow the stock would be double?
I'm not sure what it would do. I'm not sure if that's.
I'm
not sure if that's what accounts for the. I just say the market check right now is that it hasn't been well received. That they're going after Warner Brothers, and they haven't convinced people that it's, the most important thing.
Look, because I don't think it ultimately is the most important thing. I think this is a nice to have.
It's $80 billion.
I understand that.
That's like the biggest thing we've had in a while, isn't it?
I think it's more of a nice to have for Netflix than it is for Paramount.
Not only that, I mean, what was the story when Warner Brothers was worth $7 a share? What's it worth? Is it worth 30?
Well, that's a great question of what even Warner Brothers should be worth.
So you're not sure either. I don't know. Nobody
I don't know the answer.
But I don't. Netflix has a great business model. Do they need this and the headaches that come with it?
Well, the question is, if you take all of the Warner Brothers films and shows and everything else that are not on the platform,
I've seen Casablanca so many times.
And you take it off the platform, what does that do? There's also one piece that I think is forgotten, which is Netflix has such a broad audience globally. Think about the marketing spend for films right now. Think about the marketing spend is outrageous, right?
Netflix is not spending enough. I don't know if you've tried to watch any of the dramas lately.
But if you could,
I wish they'd take the $70 billion and spend it on
If you could simply market some of these films and on the actual Netflix platform, which is basically free to you, it becomes a huge cost savings. There's lots of interesting things that I think could happen. We'll see.
We talked about this yesterday. I like theater popcorn, okay? And I can't get that at home.
Okay.
We had Citron on. He's really bullish on AMC. Not bullish, but thinks AMC is totally undervalued.
I was just at an AMC.
Isn't it great?
And let me just say, I saw a movie called Crime 101, Chris Hemsworth. It was actually a good movie, fun movie.
Your buddy Mark Ruffalo's in there.
Yeah,
your soulmate.
When I tell you that maybe 12 people were in the movie theater.
No, I don't.
And nobody was at this movie theater for all the films that were there. And
you got to have a good opening.
How are these people? How is this whole place even in business?
Well, what happens when you get a big opening and everybody's there and it's exciting? You don't want that not to be.
They don't have that week after week.
Right. Well, that's
why it doesn't work.
That's why it's under $2. No, it might work, but it's under $2 at this point.
Well, I'm just saying.
You know what gave them a bridge to where it might work was when I set up that Taylor Swift movie.
I know you're responsible for Taylor Swift.
Not all of her success.
Just some.
Just that. Just the movie.
Late Show host Stephen Colbert fighting back against a denial now by CBS that it blocked the broadcast of his interview with Democratic Texas State Representative James Tallarico.
And for the lawyers to release this without even talking to me is really surprising. I don't even know what to do with this crap. Oh, hold on.
Colbert's comments came hours after CBS issued a statement on the growing controversy. CBS said it had not barred Colbert's interview with Tallarico from being aired. The network said it gave Colbert's show legal guidance that the interview could trigger the FCC's equal time rule for other candidates. Now, Tallarico is running in the Democratic primary for a Texas Senate seat. That interview ended up being posted on Late Show's YouTube page instead of being aired on the linear channel. It was viewed more than 4 million times in the process. So, look, there's always been the rule about equal time, but the truth is it has never been enforced. And so here we are in this moment where all of a sudden there's this effort to enforce it. I completely understand where...
You don't think the bigger picture is Johnny Carson would never have some Senate primary person on because it was late night TV, it was supposed to be funny. So the whole overriding picture that you're not seeing is this guy doesn't do a late night TV show. In my view, when is he gone? May? That can't come soon enough.
Did
you see what Robert?
You dislike him so much.
Okay, okay. Robert Duvall.
That's
the great Robert. Can I finish this? When Robert Duvall died.
Yes.
He just died. They went back to one of his interviews with David Letterman. It was one of the final David Letterman interviews.
Okay. He
said, the guy replacing you, why is he replacing you? He's not funny. And that's been my view the entire time. I don't need political... He's not a kingmaker. Stephen Colbert is not a political kingmaker. He's someone that's supposed to amuse me with his lame celebrity guests and comedians.
I thought you were a free market guy, Joe.
Oh, Andrew, okay.
I thought you were a free
Is the
market
Fed
guy.
still independent? That was your big concern.
No. The point is that if the marketplace wants to or not, by the way, the marketplace may not want
so
Stephen
you're
Colbert,
contending that the FCC is blocking this guy's... I don't know. I don't even know what you're saying. Are your First Amendment rights are you scared again?
All I'm suggesting to you is that so far, if the TV gods want to air something, I think they should be allowed to air something. That's the point.
As bad as it is for ratings and entertainment, that's fine, and they can.
Well, apparently they can't.
Well, I don't.
Apparently they can't.
All right.
So the point is, if you believe, not just it's not about the First Amendment. If you don't want to feel coerced into having certain people on the show.
You don't know that that's the case. You don't know that that's the case. So why would CBS?
Know that's the case?
Why would
CBS said out loud?
Why would they not want this guy on? Who cares?
No. Because they believe that
Trump doesn't want him on, or something?
That the FCC and the Trump administration is going to somehow try to do something to their network. That's exactly what this is about.
This goes all the way back. This goes back to the law firms and to the Harvard and to CBS. I think there was a problem at all these places. I'm glad that finally someone is saying, look, you need to change your ways. You have been so one-sided all along. I'm glad Barry Weiss is there. I'm glad Harvard has to address anti-Semitism. I'm glad that all these things.
Now you're.
No, I'm not. I'm not.
These are a whole bunch of things.
These are all the things that you think is overreach from Trump.
Well, the question is, should businesses be able to behave without a monitor?
Do you sit up at night thinking that they can't?
I think that there's a lot of CEOs who think they can't. They think they can't come out and say what they actually think. You don't.
I think a lot of CEOs like what's happening. You think they're all afraid to say something?
No. I think there's elements of what's going on that they like. By the way, for the most part, well, the stock market's had its own issues. Dow obviously is in a good place.
Hasn't had any issues.
Well, no, but
yet.
some of these tech companies have had their issues. But that's a different story. I think there's some CEOs who like some of the things economically that are happening, and then there's other people who think that there's a lot of things they don't like.
What do you think is going to happen if the market continues to go and GDP really ratchets up from some of the tailwinds, oil prices stay low,
that will be good politically for this administration.
It's going to be so hard to find something to worry about at that point. I guess you'll have to go back to that we're not in a free society. I don't know. Go over to Britain where you could go to jail for misgendering.
Is there nothing you dislike about what's going on right now? You think everything's just hunky-dory?
I would think about some things. I'm pretty happy with the state of the, like there's going to be a SOTU, there's going to be a State of the Union.
Yep.
I think things are pretty good right now, yeah. Is there anything you do like that's happening?
Oh, look, I think the economic growth has been fascinating and fabulous. I don't know, as you used to say about other administrations, I don't know if that's because of the administration or in spite of the administration, as you used to tell me. When things were going well, you'd say, oh, yeah, it's going well, but it's in spite of the president. I'll give this president credit for the things that have happened. But I think there's other things around free speech and speech and the like.
You're not worried about the Fed independence anymore with Warsh.
I like Kevin.
We spent a lot of time talking about.
But I think there's a big question.
Was that a false alarm? Was Fed independence a false alarm?
Let's see if Lisa Cook's job is still there. Let's see how many people get replaced in the Fed and whether it turns out to look a lot more like the Supreme Court or something else. Right? I mean, I think there's a question.
I'm not losing a lot of sleep over Stephen Colbert and some possible Senate. I wish he'd have someone on like a good comedian and have him on and make me laugh, and like a good band, like a.
I don't think they're trying to attract your.
Yeah, no.
I don't think they want
Steven
you as
needs
an
to tell me
I don't
how.
think- I don't
Steven
think they
needs
want
to
you
tell
as
me
an
how I
audience.
can be more virtuous. Okay, thanks.
Cheese will be next.
Coming up on Squawk Pod, New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani has proposed a new budget, which includes a threat to hike property taxes if Governor Kathy Hochul fails to pass a wealth tax. Partnership for New York City President and CEO Stephen Fulop shares the response from the city's business community.
You hear across the board that they are looking to grow elsewhere, that is for sure. Picking up the entire operation is a tough thing to do for people that want to have a presence here.
Welcome back to Squawk Pod from CNBC. Here's Andrew Ross Sorkin.
New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani is delivering his preliminary budget proposal on Tuesday and threatened to raise property taxes as a last resort if he is unsuccessful in convincing Albany to raise taxes on the wealthy.
Taxing the rich will put the city back on its firm financial footing, and taxing the rich at the scale that we proposed not only does that, but also advances the affordability agenda.
Joining us right now is Partnership for New York City President and CEO Stephen Fulop. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Okay, so do you think that this threat is going to turn into reality?
Well, first of all, we anticipated it. I'll start there. So we were kind of prepared with what we wanted to say and point out. But I would tell you, I think it's a political mistake. I think that the governor has showed that she's not going to be bullied. So that was kind of the narrative. People blame the mayor for property taxes, regardless of how you frame it. And I think that giving two choices of taxes only kind of frames things in a way that makes us less competitive relative to other states.
So, but I think the real question is, assuming he can't get the wealth tax going, and he does want to balance the budget, or maybe not, how would you do it?
If I was looking to balance the budget, if I was the mayor.
If you're the mayor and you're looking around at the money and you're saying, we don't really have the revenues to do all the things we want to do, what would you do?
I think that there are a lot of options. First of all, New York City has entitlement programs that are unique to New York City on rent relief. Most of entitlement programs are at the federal level. New York City has those. They're astronomically expensive. I think you could do
the rent relief program. So, but he also has, he ran on trying to make it more affordable for people to live in the city.
But taxes and job creation leads to affordability as well. Housing growth takes a decade in time. He's on the right track there, but there's a lot of things you could do. Beyond that, I mean, if you want to have a constructive conversation around schools, I know people don't want to go there, but there was 1.1 million children in the schools. Today's 800,000. That is a fair conversation to have, why the budget keeps increasing. I think that there are other things you can do. The challenge is that his political base is very difficult to please. And he's trying to navigate both the political base and the practicality of being an executive, and that's not an easy thing to do.
What do you think the reaction is thus far to what's happening in California? By the way, I don't know if you saw what's happening in Seattle, state of Washington. I mean, it's pretty wild. I think you could see an exodus from both of those places. I spoke to the mayor and asked him about what was happening and this idea of whether he thought everyone's going to move to Miami. And he said he doesn't believe that. Not only does he not believe that, the numbers, interestingly, even in the past couple months, don't seem to be suggesting that business is leaving New York. In fact, it appears that business is coming to New York. And I believe that is giving him, meaning the mayor, a little bit of oomph in his step, if you will.
You can parse the data in a lot of different ways. So he would say there's more millionaires today in New York City. If you look at the share of millionaires relative to anywhere else, you would say it's decreased. You can make that argument and could have that all day. The reality is, if you do what he's proposing to do, taxes in New York City would be roughly 22% on the corporate side, relative to New Jersey, a mile away, 11%. So you reach a tripwire at some point. If it's 100% higher than a mile away, people will make this decision.
The argument that he's made is that actually taxes in New York City on companies is lower, and he's trying to match New Jersey. Explain why.
So he's being a little bit disingenuous in that, because when you layer on New York City taxes, MTA taxes, and the corporate tax for the state, it's roughly 17% today. So if you mirror what New Jersey has in the corporate tax, you go to 22% here. That's independent analysis, nonpartisan. So, at some point, you reach that tripwire. And the effective tax rate on the income side, right, is more than 50% for high earners here in New York. So, effectively, the state or the city is your majority partner without doing the majority of the work. So it is a problem, ultimately. And you do reach a tripwire at some point.
Do you think, or are you hearing from anybody in the partnership for the city that they are going to leave the city?
So you hear across the board that they are looking to grow elsewhere. That is for sure. Picking up the entire operation is a tough thing to do for people that want to have a presence here. And that's
I was just going to say, JP Morgan just built this gorgeous new building right on Park Avenue.
If you look at Texas, JP Morgan has more employees in Texas than they do in New York City for the first time. Texas has more employees in financial services than New York City for the first time. And what we try to point out is that Texas has a comprehensive strategy on how they're approaching this. New York is just kind of stuck in this kind of...
What kind of reaction are you getting from the mayor on that front?
Look, we've had multiple conversations on that. I think we're in a place that, he would say we agree to disagree. But the reality is that he's still navigating the transition from being a legislator to an executive, I think from an activist mindset to being more of the mayor, so to speak, in a responsible governing role. So I think a transition is going to take some time.
No, I like some of the things, just looking at some of the comments from your organization. It's got to be. Have we said anything about other than raising taxes for trying to figure things out?
So nothing yet. And I think that our place is going to have a constructive conversation in figuring out solutions. But if he wants to partner with the business community, I couldn't tell you.
In this Mamdani mayorship, is there any chance that you talk about that rather than just more money coming in?
So we've had constructive conversations. The question is really going to be around implementation. And we're 6 weeks in, so it's hard to kind of cast aspersions or say unilaterally one way or the other. But we're cautious because I think people are concerned about his actions when he does what he did yesterday.
Maybe more importantly in the whole dynamic is actually the governor.
Yes.
And just give me your analysis of where you think her head ultimately is in terms of where New York State ultimately goes, because she does have the cards in the end.
The most important player is the governor. We are very supportive of the governor. Let's start there. The governor is not one.
Well, you're supportive of the governor because so far she's holding steady with you.
That is correct. And I will tell you, but that's the reason why you support somebody in elected office, right? When you have consistent views. But she's shown courage to push back on the left in this climate, which is a difficult thing to do. And she's not one to be bullied. So when the mayor gets up there yesterday and says, if you don't raise taxes on the wealthiest people, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. She has showed a willingness to push back. So, of course, we're going to be supportive of her.
What did I read? There was a number that came out, the shortfall. I don't know, was that in your interview with him? And then it was wrong because Wall Street bonuses took care of 60% of the shortfall. Did it occur to the mayor that maybe Wall Street isn't the enemy and it'd be nice to not drive everyone out of here?
It's a good point. So he came out with a $12 billion budget deficit. Right. We came out that day and said that that's inaccurate. It's going to shrink.
It's more like
Wall Street. It's going to continue to shrink when the April revenue numbers come out because Wall Street is punching above its weight. And I'm just going to point out that most other states appreciate the biggest industries that they have. Texas appreciates the oil industry. New York City approaches financial services with skepticism.
But what do you think's going on in California then? What do you think's going on in the state of Washington?
I think you have a political party that has showed that they're just angry. The far left is angry and wants to be punitive. It's the reason that at rallies they say tax the rich. They don't chant fund childcare. It's tax the rich. They just want somebody to have less money than they do because they view the system as being unequal.
Right, and they get to go on Colbert every night and talk about it.
It always comes back. It always comes back to the media, Joe. It always comes back to the media.
One-sided, they talk about it.
Stephen, want to thank you for coming in this morning.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Fighting the good fight.
Next on Squawk Pod, we're digging into the FDA's attempts to reform baby formula. We're also looking at the impact the agency's leadership is having on investments in health. Former FDA Commissioner Dr. Scott Gottlieb.
Investment in vaccines is certainly being pulled back. And I think a lot of people are looking to pull back investments in cell and gene therapy as well right now because it looks like it's a harder space to invest in because of the unpredictability of the agency.
This is Squawk Pod.
You're watching Squawk Box right here on CNBC. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin along with Joe Kernen. Becky is off today.
The FDA is getting ready to review infant formula products and processed foods. Joining us now on this and other health issues, former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb. He's a CNBC contributor, serves on the boards of Illumina, Pfizer, and United Health. And it's always good to see you. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning.
It's the latest. Is this MAHA more? Anything that you agree with in terms of this latest proposal?
Look, there's a lot to agree with here. This proposal from the Kennedy, Secretary Kennedy, Operation Stork Speed, as he called it, came after a March 2025 report from Consumer Reports that had tested about 40 different baby formulas and found high levels of certain inorganic metals in those baby formulas, some of which are trace amounts, which probably are going to be in anything we eat, fruits, vegetables, because we can detect things at very low levels, but some that certainly shouldn't have been there and were in higher levels than what the allowable limits are. And so this is a real concern. And so what I think the Secretary is going to do is put more stringent requirements on testing of baby formulas to make sure that these heavy metals don't occur in these formulas at levels that could pose a risk to children. There's also a refrain among folks, including the Secretary, that we don't see a lot of variety in baby formulas and new ingredients that could potentially be more healthful. I think that's a tougher issue because we have a drug standard in this country when it comes to baby formula in terms of how they're manufactured and how we regulate them versus Europe, which a lot of people point to, which has more of a food standard and allows more flexibility in how those formulas are derived and how they're made and what ingredients are included. We have that drug standard to help ensure that there aren't contaminants in formulas like, bacteria that could cause outbreaks of foodborne illness. Europe tolerates a much higher level of outbreaks in baby formula than we do in the U.S., so we require drug-like manufacturing standards. And that limits the ability of manufacturers to reformulate these baby formulas. It's much more difficult to do that in the U.S. You have to run effectively a clinical trial, a growth study, that if you reformulate a baby formula in the United States, you have to feed it to children in a clinical study and make sure that their growth is maintained as it would have been on the prior formula. So it's a very costly, long process. And so what you see in the U.S. is most baby formula manufacturers really don't reformulate these products. They stick with old ingredients and old recipes, and that limits the variety on the market.
What are we talking about in terms of, and you mentioned it in your pre-interview, is it called GRAS, the GRAS loophole? What's GRAS stand for, G-R-A-S, that RFK talks about?
Yeah, well,
it's problematic, isn't it? But he can't fix it?
It is problematic. I think it's going to be challenging to fix through regulation alone. So this is a separate issue. This is generally regarded as safe. So we have a system in this country where food manufacturers can put new ingredients into the food supply by determining based on their own scientific analysis that they're generally regarded as safe. And this is a voluntary process. They submit a notice to the FDA that they want to include this new ingredient. The FDA has 180 days to act on that notice, or the manufacturer can put the ingredient into the food supply. Now, most reputable manufacturers will wait for the FDA to respond. They won't want to formulate a food product with a new ingredient where the FDA hasn't opined on it. But there is a so-called loophole, and this is what the Secretary talks about, that allows manufacturers to self-certify and just put that ingredient into the food supply. And some small manufacturers and those who aren't, in my view, acting as responsibly will do that. They'll go ahead and do that. We looked at closing this so-called loophole where people could self-certify and put a new ingredient into the food supply when I was there. We tried to do it through guidance and proposed a rule at the time. We drafted a rule. We determined that ultimately we couldn't do it without new authority from Congress. And so I think in a post-Chevron world where even less deference is given to regulatory agencies, it's going to be hard for them to do this through rulemaking alone. I think what they're likely to do when the Secretary talks about this, if you read between the lines, I think they're likely to make a determination that certain of these ingredients they no longer view as safe. And I think once they do that, once they make a declaration and perhaps put out a list of ingredients that they're concerned about, you'll see food manufacturers voluntarily withdraw those ingredients. One final point on this. There are certain ingredients where you have to actually file a petition with the agency and go through rulemaking. So things like new food colors or contact substances, packaging for food, those actually need a formal rulemaking process.
Scott, I wanted to ask you about this since you ran the FDA. I'm reading from the Wall Street Journal. This is last week. I haven't seen you since this came out. I want you to tell me what you think of this. Quote, it's hard, this is the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. It's hard to recall a regulator who has done as much damage to medical innovation in as little time as Vinay Prasad. In his latest drive-by shooting, the leader of the FDA's vaccine division rejected Moderna's mRNA vaccine without even a cursory review. This is arbitrary government at its worst. Thoughts?
This is pointing to Vinay Prasad, who was appointed by the FDA commissioner to run the Center for Biologics. He was also appointed the chief medical officer and the chief scientific officer, and is the head of biostatistics in the Center for Biologics and runs the vaccine group. So he is effectively running the agency. He's running many components of the agency right now. And then what we know based on the reporting in top-tier publications is he's acting unilaterally to make decisions on products in a way that just hasn't been done before, without, in my view, the requisite experience. He's overruling staff to block the approval of products. It's not just the Moderna vaccine. We've seen more than a half a dozen cell and gene therapies where he's intervened to hold up the approval of those products and change guidance that companies were previously given. You now have many companies coming out saying that they had agreed to certain requirements in terms of what they needed to do in clinical trials to gain approval with the FDA's career staff. And then once those trials were completed and they'd spent $1 billion on clinical trials, Vinay made a unilateral decision to not approve the products because he either didn't agree with the prior guidance they were given or the data that they produced.
What is the long-term implication of the way he and other members of the FDA are operating in terms of investment by healthcare companies, new drugs, vaccines, and the like? Because it appears that actually investment, for example, in vaccines is now drying up. And I wonder what the implication of that is, not for tomorrow, but actually for 5 years from now in the United States.
Yeah, look, investment in vaccines is certainly being pulled back. There was a good New York Times article that documented a lot of this. I think it goes well beyond even what the New York Times captured last week in their article. There's increased unpredictability in the whole process. That increases the cost of capital, not just within the vaccine space, but within the whole biologics space as well. And I think a lot of people are looking to pull back investments in cell and gene therapy as well right now because it looks like it's a harder space to invest in because of the unpredictability of the agency. People just don't know what the requirements are going to be. You can't rely on an agreement with the agency in terms of what the structure of a clinical trial should be, because if you do that and you hit the endpoints, you face the risk that Vinay Prasad will act unilaterally because he objects to how the trial was conducted or what the data shows, even if you hit your endpoints that you previously agreed to with the agency. So this is causing people to pull back from investments and just increasing the cost of capital across the board.
You asked me, by the way, Scott, this is not for you, this is for Joe. You asked me in the last hour, are there reasons to worry about what's going on in the country? This is actually something that I put very high on the list of things that are actually worrisome, not just for tomorrow, but for the long term, next 5 or 10 years.
The way that RFK is running.
I don't know if it's RFK. I don't know if it's Vinay Prasad. I don't know who you want to pin the blame on. Right. But I'm just suggesting that right now there are things going on, and they're related to this administration, that I think are going to have long-term health effects.
You found something. That's not like
you. I know that I know you don't believe that there's anything out there.
That's
but
that's not like you to.
There are things out there that I would think that even you would say, you know what, actually, maybe that's not the best way.
One point I would add about the vaccines.
Go ahead.
One point I'd add about the vaccines is, we made a decision, and a lot of countries did, that it was important as a strategic priority to have a vigorous vaccine industry in a nation. You saw a lot of companies trying to invest in vaccine platforms coming out of the pandemic. Right now, we're seeing a lot of vaccine manufacturing, frankly, shift to China. You look at mRNA vaccines, almost half of all mRNA vaccines that are in development in China. There's about 900 vaccines in development globally, 300 of them are in China. So we're hitting the brakes on this at the same time that China is hitting the gas pedal because they recognize this as a strategic priority to have a vigorous vaccine industry as a hedge against situations like a future pandemic or a new disease. In the U.S., we're pulling back from those investments. And I think we're going to be sorry for that in the future when we need new vaccines to mitigate unknown risks.
Right. It's never perfect, Andrew. It's at 51% at best. I look at even the censorship in the last administration that sort of escaped most people in terms of complaining. You can always find something. Anyway, Dr. Scott, thank you. It's good to see you. There's some okay things happening in the world, aren't there, in general, Scott? You look like
you're smiling. I think what the Secretary is trying to do on the closing that grass loophole makes eminent sense. I just think it's going to be difficult to do through rulemaking. And I think what they're doing on baby formula is actually good reforms. I think there's some smart ideas embedded in that.
Okay.
That's Squawk Pod for today. Thank you for listening today and every other day. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin, and you can catch them live for 3 hours every weekday morning on CNBC. To get the smartest interviews and analysis from that TV show right into your ears, follow Squawk Pod wherever you're listening now. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow. Have a great day.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.